Welcome everybody. In today's video, we will be exploring the mysterious and fascinating phenomenon of consciousness. Consciousness is the subjective experience of being aware of our thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. It is the basis of our ability to think, reason, and make decisions. And it is one of the most fundamental aspects of the universe. But what exactly is consciousness, and how does it arise? These are some of the most profound and perplexing questions in science and philosophy, and they have puzzled thinkers for centuries. One popular theory is that consciousness arises from the complex interactions of neurons in the brain. According to this view, the firing of neurons creates patterns of electrical activity that give rise to our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. But this raises another question. How do these patterns of activity give rise to the subjective experience of consciousness? This is known as the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains one of the biggest mysteries in science. The hard problem of consciousness is the challenge of explaining how and why we have subjective experiences. It is distinct from the soft problem of consciousness, which is a challenge of explaining how the brain processes information and produces behavior. Some theories have suggested that the strange phenomena of quantum mechanics may be related to consciousness. For example, the quantum mind hypothesis proposes that the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics may be responsible for the emergence of consciousness. The quantum mind hypothesis is a speculative idea that suggests that the human mind or consciousness may be the result of processes occurring at the level of quantum mechanics in the brain. This hypothesis is based on the observation that certain features of the human mind, such as free will and creativity, are difficult to explain using classical models of physics and may be better understood in terms of quantum mechanics. However, the quantum mind hypothesis is highly controversial and is not accepted by the majority of scientists and researchers. Many argue that there is no evidence to support the idea that quantum mechanics plays a role in the processes of the brain that give rise to consciousness, and that the hypothesis is not well defined or testable. Until more research is done, the quantum mind hypothesis remains a topic of debate and speculation. Then there's also the dualist theory. The dualist theory is a philosophical concept that posits the existence of two distinct and separate substances, matter and consciousness. According to this theory, consciousness is a non-physical entity that exists independently of the physical body and the brain. There are different versions of the dualist theory, but one of the most well-known is called substance dualism. This version of dualism proposes that the mind and consciousness are a separate and distinct type of substance from the physical matter of the brain and body. Some supporters of substance dualism argue that this theory can explain certain phenomena, such as the experience of free will and the unity of consciousness, that cannot be explained by the physicalist theories that view consciousness as a product of the brain. However, the dualist theory is highly controversial as well and is not accepted by the majority of scientists and philosophers. And as you have dualism, you also have non-dualism. Non-dualism is a philosophical concept that posits that there is only one fundamental substance or reality. This means that, according to non-dualism, consciousness and the physical universe are not separate and distinct entities, but are instead different aspects or expressions of a single underlying reality. One of the most well-known forms of non-dualism is called Advaita, which originated in ancient Indian philosophy. Advaita non-dualism proposes that the individual self, or Atman, is ultimately indistinguishable from the universe, or Brahman, and that the duality of the individual self and the external world is an illusion. Non-dualism is a complex and multifaceted philosophical concept, and there are many different interpretations and variations of the idea. However, at its core, non-dualism asserts the unity and inseparability of consciousness and the physical universe. If you've never heard of Advaita, then it might be interesting as well to know that there is also Advaita Vedanta. Advaita and Advaita Vedanta are often used interchangeably to refer to the same philosophy, but there is a subtle difference between the two terms. Advaita is a Sanskrit word that literally means not two or non-dual. This term is used to refer to the philosophical concept of non-dualism, which posits the unity and inseparability of consciousness and the physical universe. Advaita Vedanta is a specific school of thought within the Vedanta tradition of Indian philosophy, and this school of thought is based on the principles of Advaita non-dualism, but also incorporates other elements from the Vedanta tradition, such as the use of scriptures and the emphasis on the spiritual realization. So, while Advaita and Advaita Vedanta are related and often used interchangeably, Advaita refers to the broader concept of non-dualism, while Advaita Vedanta refers to a specific school of thought within the Indian philosophy that incorporates the principles of Advaita non-dualism. Then there's another theory, and that is the panpsychist theory. The panpsychist theory is a philosophical concept that proposes that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe and is present in some form in all matter. This means that according to panpsychism, consciousness is not something that emerges only in complex organisms like humans, but is instead a fundamental aspect of the universe that exists at the level of individual particles or atoms. Panpsychism is also a controversial theory and is not widely accepted within the scientific community. Critics argue that there is no evidence to support the idea that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe and that the theory is difficult to test or verify. However, supporters of panpsychism argue that the theory can explain certain phenomena, such as the emergence of consciousness in complex systems, in a way that physicalist theories cannot. They also argue that panpsychism is consistent with certain aspects of quantum mechanics and the nature of reality. Overall, the debate over panpsychism is ongoing, and the theory remains a topic of philosophical and scientific debate. Then the last theory I'd like to mention is the Idealist Theory. The Idealist Theory is a philosophical concept that proposes that consciousness is the fundamental reality and that the physical world is an illusion. This means that, according to idealism, the material world and everything in it, including our own bodies, are not real in the same way that our consciousness is real. There are different versions of the Idealist Theory, but one of the most well-known is called Absolute Idealism. This version proposes that the individual self and the external world are ultimately inseparable and that the duality of the self and the world is an illusion. The Idealist Theory is a highly controversial and debated topic in philosophy. Critics argue that there is no evidence to support the idea that the physical world is an illusion and that the theory is difficult to reconcile with our everyday experiences or observations. However, supporters of idealism argue that the theory can provide a compelling explanation for the nature of consciousness and the relationship between the individual self and the external world. But regardless of how consciousness arises, one thing is clear. It is an essential aspect of our existence and an integral part of the fabric of reality. In conclusion, the nature of consciousness is one of the deepest mysteries in science and philosophy, and while we may not have all the answers yet, the study of consciousness continues to provide us with fascinating insights into the nature of reality and the workings of the mind. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this was valuable to you.